从受援国到捐款国，从取经者到经验传播者，他称赞中国与世界银行的合作堪称典范。从转型升级谈到高质量发展，他强调中国经济的健康发展关乎世界。高端访谈专访世界银行第14任行长彭安杰，敬请收看。
关注国际焦点，洞察世界风云。大家好，欢迎来到本期的高端访谈，我是邹韵。今天我们要对话的嘉宾是世界银行第14任行长彭安杰。作为全球最大的多边开发机构，世界银行如何看待中国的发展成就？如何解读未来的全球发展趋势？在过去的40多年间，中国与世界银行走过了怎样的合作历程？而双方在未来又将如何继续深化发展伙伴关系，拓展务实合作呢？今天我们一起在对话中寻找答案。
President Benga, thank you for joining us on Leaders Talk.
Sure, thank you for having me on, and it's a pleasure to be here.
We're here at China Development Forum. We're senior Chinese officials, global business leaders, and representatives like you from international organizations gathered here to discuss some of the most pressing issues concerning the growth of the world and China's development. So to start with, what issues top your agenda?
Coming here after 2 or 3 years, but I used to come frequently to the China Development Forum. I see this event as a way for the private sector to engage with government and its policies in China for where China wants to go with its new idea of growth. You know, they've had a certain model of growth for a long time, and it's done really well. I think that's the first issue. What's going to happen now in the future? The second big topic for me is the topic of green growth, showing that you can grow while being environmentally sensible. So these two are quite important to me.
在世界经济整体疲弱的背景下，中国2023年国内生产总值超过126万亿元，比上年增长5.2%。中国经济如何实现持续发展？中国发展新机遇将如何增益世界？在北京召开1年1度的中国发展高层论坛，聚焦这些议题，吸引了国际组织、中外商界领袖和专家学者的热烈讨论。世界银行行长彭安杰在论坛上发表讲话称，所有经济体的发展之路都充满挫折、失误，是渐进式的发展。但中国的非凡历程证明了一切皆有可能。
Well, Mr. President, let's talk a little bit about China's economic growth, because during China's political season, the 2 sessions, China has set its economic growth target at around 5% for 2024. What is your take on this GDP target?
I don't think the number is as important. Whether you make, remember they said around 5, so it could be a little below, a little above. I think what's important is 2 things. First, 5 itself is a remarkable number for an economy of this size. That is true. But China's size and the denominator effect is very different from what it was 2 or 3 decades ago. Second, I think they're going through a transformation of the economy for the future of China. The model that China used for growth for the last few decades was a model that worked at that time. They're trying to change that to a different model for the future. And that requires innovation, technology, green industries, consumption to grow. And I think that's a different way of growing. That transition period will take its time. But 2 things you should not forget when you think about China's growth. The first is that even at around 5%, it's still contributing 30% of global growth.
Exactly.
Second, it has infrastructure in a way that most countries do not. It has 30% of the world's manufacturing capacity in this country. So it's got assets, it's got a skilled workforce. It has challenges. It has an aging population, and therefore that needs to be managed. So it's got challenges like every other country. I'm convinced that China will work hard on both the change of the economic model, but also managing through demographic changes.
And China, as you just mentioned, has been a major driver and contributor to global economic growth. And a study from the World Bank has shown that from 2013 to 2021, its contribution to global economic growth averaged more than 38%. That's more than all the G7 countries combined. So how would you define the role of China in the global economic landscape that is filled with uncertainties and headwinds?
My belief is that an economy of 1.4 billion people with the size that today China is, has a role to play in world economic growth. Countries that are as large as China or the European Union's global economy or the United States, their economic growth and changes impact everybody else. And I think that is an important aspect of the global interconnected world that we have built. I think out over the period of time, a healthy, economically growing China is very important to the rest of the world as well.
If you take a closer look of China's economy, you will find the term new quality productive forces as a new buzzword. Well, this term was first proposed by Chinese President Xi, which underlines the great importance of high technology, high efficiency, as well as high quality for the development, among other factors. So what do you make of the significance of this paradigm shift?
So I think of this in two ways. One is the more obvious one of being connected to green. What China is trying to do over the last 7-10 years is to attack air, water, and soil to improve the quality of those for future generations. And they're trying to prove that you can grow, but you can grow with ecological responsibility at the same time. I think the second part of the conversation of high quality growth has to deal with making sure that where China goes in the future is appropriate for China's population. And I think that requires you to understand demographics, requires you to understand the skill dividend that China has gained because of the investment it has put into training its labor force. Every year, 15 million people are coming into the labor force in China, even now. And they're being trained and educated in a way that is useful for China's economic growth. So to me, high quality development is ecological development, but also development appropriate for China's population and its needs.
In which sectors do you see the greatest potential for China's development?
Growth? Oh, I think everything to do with innovation and technology will be a huge opportunity. China has great advantages in technology and innovation, and I think that should continue to be pursued. I think green, if you look at the way China has invested in solar and wind over the last 15, 20 years, it's not a coincidence that half of the renewable energy capacity being added in the world is happening in one country. I think that's a good thing.
Well, you made a speech here, and during speech you said we have faced challenges before and overcome them together. And you also said that China's remarkable journey stands as a testament to what's possible. So what do you really mean by that? Now, what do you think are some of the lessons and practices from China's development might be helpful and inspirational for other countries?
So I think China is one of those countries that is the model case in some ways for how the bank should be working with the country. China at one time, back 40 years ago, was a recipient of IDA grants. And IDA is that part of the bank that lends money to the countries that are most in need. And essentially, these are grants or very deeply concessional financing that these countries get. China got that. From there to where today China is one of the larger donors to the bank is a perfect story of how you get income and money from the bank when you need it, and then the time comes and you're better off and you can help other countries. So that's one part of the story. The other part is right from the beginning, China and its government did a sort of a collaboration with the bank where the focus was not just on money, but on knowledge. And I think the idea of pulling knowledge from the bank and from our people and our expertise, and then using it for projects and development in China, and now taking China's experience and using it elsewhere, that again is a model case for the World Bank. So for example, ideas of what you're doing with green sustainable growth have been used elsewhere. Your train systems, your infrastructure, these are things that can be used elsewhere. So the idea of a learning model which learns both ways is as important as the money. And I tell everyone that the World Bank is both a money bank and a knowledge bank. And China has made use of both.
世界银行成立于1944年，现有189个成员国，5家下属机构。 世界银行通过提供贷款、信贷和技术援助来支持发展中国家的基础设施建设、教育、卫生和农业等领域的发展。多年来，在减少贫困、推动可持续发展和解决全球性挑战方面发挥了重要作用。1980年5月15日，中国正式恢复在世界银行的合法席位，开启了双方合作的序幕。1981年，世界银行及其下属的国际开发协会向中国提供了第一笔合计2亿美元的混合贷款，以支持中国的高等教育发展。40多年来，中国成功完成了从单纯向世行借款到主动为其捐款，从向世行引进外脑到共享中国经验，从普通成员国到第3大股东国的转变。中国与世界银行的合作见证了中国经济的高速发展，也推动了中国在世界舞台上扮演越来越重要的角色。
Tackling climate change has been one of your priorities since taking office, and the World Bank has set some very ambitious goals at the COP28 meeting in Dubai. And you have also previously said, quote unquote, we need to get past the talk because my grandchild's time is running out. So explain to us about the urgency here, yes. And how can you ensure that this is not just talk the talk?
Yes, so look, at the end of the day, there are two aspects to climate. One part of it is emissions and energy that is used for lives of people. After all, as a country grows and the middle class grows, consumption goes up, your demands for energy go up. Yesterday I was in a province at Hebei, right. And I went and saw a village where coal-fired use of both for cooking as well as for heating in the house had been converted to natural gas.
Yes, and that's actually a program
of the government.
Right.
With subsidized power, but also subsidized natural gas burners. But the important thing, the subsidy is what got consumers to no longer worry about the cost difference. But what is really interesting was the change in their lives. First of all, they were educated about the importance of cleaner fuel than their previous way. Second, small thing, but all of them put roofs in the open area of their house. They couldn't do that with coal because the smoke would get trapped. Now they had a house which is dry and enclosed, and therefore better heated as well in the winter, better cooled in the summer. And that, along with the aspect of health and breathing, there's also just the quality of life aspect. I saw that, and I saw how they worked on not just household consumption, but also agricultural and transport and industrial. And then we went to a monitoring center where these dozens of monitoring stations were keeping a track of the quality of air and being able to track it and monitor it. So I think there's a whole package that got put together in that particular case. Now, why am I saying all this? Because I think along with this comes the opportunity to lead a better life. For example, now they're attracting tourists there. They're trying to earn income from that. The farmers are benefiting from it. So I think prosperity and shared prosperity is an important topic, but it's not just about the money, it's also about the quality of life.
In what way do you think it or has made a difference, not only here in China, but might also be replicable to some other countries around the world?
Oh, well, I think it's applicable in many places, because the idea of tackling climate across all dimensions, not just cooking at a home or heating in a home, but also crop residue burning, also transportation, also industrial pollution, and tackling it holistically across a regional airshed, because air is fungible, right? You can't just deal with the air above you, you have to deal across a regional airshed. And I think this program did all that correctly. The second part about it that's very important is the monitoring. And the ability to track emissions, use that technology, have field forces of people who can go to where the problem is detected, fix it, and provide a feedback loop. These are applicable everywhere. So this is not just a China only. This is one of those things that can go everywhere.
You had decades of experience as a corporate executive before coming to the bank.
Yeah.
And I can't help but notice that you pay great attention to a value called DQ, decency quotient.
So you've researched me, huh?
I did very well research, and that is not only back in the business world, but now also at the World Bank. So what does decency here really mean in this context, and why it really matters in addition to IQ and EQ?
I was trying to explain to employees in my prior company, in MasterCard, this is where this happened, that when I was young, what mattered was your IQ. When I got to business school, what began to be talked about was your EQ. You know, you couldn't choose your boss or your colleagues, but how you responded to difficult situations determined your success. And I think in our world, what really matters now is your decency quotient, meaning decency is a word you cannot misinterpret. It basically requires you to make the other person feel like you're an equal, to make the other person feel that my hand is on your back and not in your face, to make the other person feel that I will care about giving you a level playing field, so then you can run to win.
President Banga, it was a great pleasure talking to you today.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
在专访当中，彭安杰赞赏了中国的经济发展。他说，这个拥有14亿人口的经济体，在世界经济增长中发挥着重要作用。在彭安杰的眼中，中国与世界银行的合作堪称典范，而中国也在过去的40多年间完成了从受援国到最大捐款国之一，从取经者到经验传播者的转变。他表示，期待中国和世界银行未来继续在应对全球挑战、推动可持续发展等方面加深合作。感谢您收看本期的高端访谈，我是邹韵，我们下期再会。